Good evening, everybody. I welcome all of you to another candid chat on becoming a knowledge worker, this time with Mr. Sanjay Gupta. Uh, Before we start, let me wish all of you a very happy Teachers' Day. And today is a very opportune time for Mr. Sanjay Gupta to have agreed to share his wisdom and his life learnings with all of us today. Uh, Mr. Sanjay Gupta is the illustrious MD of PNB Housing Finance, who joined this organization 10 years ago and retired recently in May 2020. When he was given this responsibility of transforming this company, the company had an asset under management of about 3,000 crore. He started with the business process reengineering program, and in a mere 4 years, he grew the asset under management to 10,000 crore, and at the time of his retiring, it was 85,000 crore. So, in his 33-year-long career, he has given about 15 years to HDFC Limited. He's given 5 years to ABN Ambro and about a decade to PNB Housing Finance. He's a recipient of countless awards. He's a very well-known professional who's known for marrying strategy with execution. He's also very renowned for the transformation that he did in PNB Housing Finance from a public sector company to a professionally managed company. From a program called Shikhar. So today he is with us. Welcome, sir.
Good
So today,
evening, and thank you for your gracious words of it.
today
Really.
we will be talking about not your organizations, for which I think you've given numerous interviews. Today we'll be talking about you as the organization, and
All
we'll
right.
be emphasizing on first 30 years of your life. Because that's where the foundation of today's Sanjay Gupta took place.
Oh, yeah.
So you were a doctor's son
Yes,
who
I
wanted
was.
to
You
be
have
a
really
fighter
researched a
pilot.
lot. You have really researched a lot, I must say.
You wanted to be a fighter pilot
Yeah.
and joined engineering, but
Yeah.
finished BCom
Yeah.
to become India's most thoroughbred mortgage lender. Now that's a very interesting story. We would like to know more about how did this happen? Fighter pilot, joining engineering, finishing BCom, becoming a mortgage lender, and that to an exceptionally great one.
Yeah. So it all started, I mean, the romance for the Defense Forces started from the school that I went to. It was St. Joseph's College, Nainital. And every year in a batch of 36 odd, we used to have at least 15 to 20 people, students joining the NDA. And I was very much intrigued by fast moving aeroplanes, and I had a love for it. So I wanted to be a fighter pilot, but because of my eyesight, I was rejected. But that did not really put me back because I already knew about it, but I gave it a try. The real challenge came in my way that after senior Cambridge, when I was in the first year of engineering at Punjab Engineering College, or in fact the Chandigarh School of Architecture, I was detected with a congenital heart disease, which
Oh,
was asymptomatic all my life. I have lived on the hills. I've been a trekker. I've also summited for, some of the Himalayan ranges in my younger days, but it was never it never came up, and it just came up by surprise. Uh, my sister, who was a undergraduate doctor, saw that I was getting breathless while playing tennis, and she tried to take my blood pressure and could not record my blood pressure. It was such an innocent thing. And my father, while my sister sort of reported to my father, he was checking me out, only tears rolled down, and he realized that two of my valves, heart valves, were not working. And that was a congenital disease. Now, that I was too young to be operated. So that happened when I was 17 years old, and I was operated for an open heart surgery and prosthetic valve replacement at the age of 19. And it was a reported case because that was the time when prosthetic valves were just getting invented, and I have two block Shally valves. So I had to change from a strenuous engineering course to a much lighter course, and that is how I got into commerce by chance. In our family, there is only engineers and doctors other than
Yeah.
me, even in my generation. So, that is how I landed up doing commerce in an MBA.
That's a sad, but I think in the end
Very
it's a good
exciting.
story. Good story that happened. You know,
Yeah.
all's well that ends well. Uh, so with that difficult time, your childhood, your early years must have been like a roller coaster of emotions. You wanting to do something, first not being able to do it because of eyesight, then because of the heart valve condition. So how did you deal with all those failures or setbacks, I should call them?
I would say I was very lucky to have that set of parents who were very positive. And in this transition from engineering to commerce, I lost 1 year, one academic year and 1.5 calendar years.
Right.
Because, in our times, it used to be senior Cambridge, which was class 11, and then
11.
a
Yeah.
5 year engineering. So when I left from engineering, I was actually not plus two. So I had to do intermediate commerce privately with the worst of students, and then get into a BCom. And once my father, I still remember that conversation. He had a very faithful doctor, Dr. Ansari, who was also a pediatrician. And they used to together manage me along with Dr. Rajen Tandon, who was head of department cardiology AIMS. He was my father's classmate from MBBS. And Dr. Ansari said to my father, साहब बच्चे का 1.5 साल खराब हो गया. So my father just told him in front of me, Ansari, if he lives for 82 years, we will think he has lived for 80 years. कुछ नहीं खराब हुआ. And he really let me do what I felt like doing. I will be very candid. My family was so sort of, shaken up because of this, because all our doctors, engineers from 6 generations, right? That my father used to think that a commerce student has to open a photocopy shop or a PCO. I'm not joking. At times, when we used to go out for walks, so what happened was that I was, from the outside, I looked like an ordinary, normal young person,
Right.
but I could not even run for 100 meters because my
And
valves
you were
were
a trick.
weak. But I could walk for 10 miles. So our entire lifestyle, from one side, I was a trekker, I was a tennis player, things like that. I was leading a much passive life. I used to bicycle for about 15, 16 kilometers a day and things, but today I could not. So we were just going out for walks, and my father said, "ये PCO का जरा business model देखना." So I could realize where that gentleman was coming from because they never thought what a commerce graduate can do. And that is why, again, between my BCom and my MBA, there is a break of 1.5 years again, because there was nobody to counsel me. Obviously, being a science student and a math student, I was very good in accounting and maths. So
Okay.
everybody used to always say, chartered accountant ban jao. But at that time, MBAs were also coming up. So, but there was nobody to counsel me whether I should do an MBA or a CA. So I took up a job. I was the only non-MBA, non-engineer, non-chartered accountant, management trainee with DCM Shriram in Delhi.
Oh,
And
you
I
work with
still remember,
DCM.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I never write it in my CV. But I started doing a job at the age of 19 and a half.
My
I was a,
father also started with DCM Sriram Delhi.
okay, very good. And I was, RK Jain was the executive director, and he interviewed me. I still remember in Hayat Regency. And by chance, he started asking me engineering questions. And I'm an automobile buff. And I sort of steered that entire discussion to Shriram Piston and Rings. And why
Okay.
Shriram Piston and Rings were not so popular as Goex or SKF, because so I was the only guy. So I know I was not sincere in that job. I did it for about a year, and I made up my mind that chartered accountancy was not my cup of tea, because people have to follow their heart. And I always tell the youngsters, if something is not making you happy, please leave it. And then I did an MBA. That is how I got into a management course. And
Right.
I had to find my own roots or my own course, because there was no one to counsel me. All my professors and all used to think chartered accountancy is a very illustrious and a much more recognized sort of a course at that point of time. So they used to always say he's good in accounts, good in maths, good in English language. He's the guy for CA. But somewhere in my heart, I used to always think that let me fathom for myself what is the difference between a CA and an MBA. That is why I did an MBA.
So there are three very important messages for all the students who are watching us, watching this right now. You know, since it is COVID times and a lot of you are afraid about losing a year, don't worry.
Oh
1 or 2 years do not make any difference, in a long career. Second, CA is not everything. Management education could take you places. And
or any other. Now the options are so huge. There are
yes.
courses about which I don't even know. I used to interview children from those courses. Yeah.
And unlike Sanjay sir, all of you have a lot of opportunity to be counseled professionally. You all have a lot of opportunities to be mentored and guided by people around you. So you are in a much better position to make good use of this time and opportunity. So, sir, another interesting thing that I noticed was you did your BCom from Lucknow University in
Yeah.
international banking and insurance. Now, I
Yes.
didn't know such professional amalgamations existed in those days,
Oh,
and
yes.
they were respected enough for people to take it.
Yes. So let me tell you, the Indian universities were very solid. And the Lucknow Commerce faculty was actually sponsored by the Wharton Business School.
Oh,
And we used to have professors like Professor Khandelwal, Professor Kaushik, who were actually PhDs from Cornell, Wharton, etc., and had taught there. And they were our teachers, Avtar Singh Monga Sahab. We were very lucky. We were the last, I think, uh, 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 set of people who got some of the authors of very famous books as our teachers.
so,
So,
sir,
I tell you what happened. Both international banking and insurance were the least opted courses, right?
so
Then the professors used to counsel us. So I took it.
so why did you take this? I mean, like today also, I keep telling everybody to amalgamate their BCom or their graduation with some professional education. But
Yeah.
how did you think of doing BCom in international banking at that
Okay.
time?
Now that what happened was that I had seen, you know, little bit of economic history in my family. One of my cousin sisters is a World Bank, a very senior employee in Washington. So I thought doing an international, and she is from D school and things like that. She has done PhD under Dr. Henry Kissinger. I have a very illustrious set of cousins, brothers and sisters. So I thought probably doing an international banking course would help me way into banking. And
Fabulous.
insurance had not opened. And insurance was a very big gap. So I did BCom, I think, in 82, way back. So, it really attracted me. Unknown things really attract me a lot. I always want to discover. I'm always a curious mind. Even today, I'm a very, very curious mind of how this happens, of what it is, you know.
Right. So you did your BCom and then you did this
Get a
one
job.
year stint with Sriram.
Yeah.
Post that, you chose to do an MBA. Now,
Yes.
this is one dilemma which every student has today. Should I do an MBA right after graduation, or should I work for some time? What advice would you give to them?
I will always say if you get a good apprenticeship after your undergraduation, you should do it for a year, year and a half. But the only trap is the financial independence, which even I had, right? But again, you have to have a lion's heart to sacrifice these type of cushions in life
Right.
to take the next leap forward. And I tell you, my father was such a strict person that he got my scooter sold off, and he sort of took all the deposits from my savings, and he said, now you're back as a student, you will lead a student's life.
Hmm.
So you have to be very responsible about such major decisions in your life. Okay, after all, I mean, that time DCM Shriram was the fifth largest corporate house in the country.
Right.
And the management training program of DCM Shriram was not rated anywhere below a Hindustan Levers or a Tata Administrative Services.
HR leaders of that time tell me that that management program was equivalent to an MBA.
I tell you, I really tell you, I have never seen a better set of professionals. And it was such a sort of a, I mean, it's a mystery to me what happened to them. I mean, they were heavily into R&D. I was posted in Arthoni, Agra, which is the Shriram DCM fan factory. And the technology at that point of time there was so advanced. We used to have a pipe gas from Mathura refinery because, as management trainees, we were the night general managers and we had to manage the entire manufacturing unit. And
Hmm.
that is how learning at work, learning while you are doing a job, which Mr. Deepak Parik also says, started off in my life at the age of 19. You were managing 1,800 people in the night shift at the age of 19 in a manufacturing concern out of wilderness. So you could not be abrupt, you could not be rude, you could not, I mean, you have to save your life to
Right.
survive. And there were production targets, there were dispatch targets, there were sales targets, there were production planning targets, all of it. So that way, Shri Ram was a great place to learn. Great, great place to learn.
So again, we have a strong message from Mr. Sanjay Gupta that though management education helps, but doing some kind of corporate apprenticeship, getting some kind of work experience before you get into your management program will do wonders for your management education.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Uh, you did this job with Sri Ram, but did you also do any part-time jobs? Did you also do any other internships during MBA before it
No.
with
So,
school?
that time, I mean, part-time jobs were not available. We grew up in a stage where India was very deprived. Even a cassette player or a cassette recorder had to be brought in by our cousins and our relatives who were living abroad. There was a waiting of 7 years to get a brand new car. There was
Right.
a waiting for 10 years to get a scooter, right? So the times were very different. Economy was very small and the growth rates were very muted. But yes, during MBA, I did a summer training with Cadbury's, and that was also my first job after MBA, of which I'd never write. I was a five-star brand manager with Vineeta Bali and Sachin Gopal. That was my first job after MBA, and then I joined HDFC.
Oh, so this was not the internship. This was your first campus
No, so the
job.
internship was also there, then I got a job.
So you got a pre-placement offer from your
Yeah,
internship.
yeah,
Now that's an interesting learning because a lot of students go for internships, and
yeah,
we encourage them to do something exceptionally good during their internship to score a pre-placement offer.
right.
So what did you do to impress your employers that your internship translated into a job?
See, as I tell you, the dignity of labor has to be defined in your own mind. And during my internship, I was given the responsibility to design the marketing MIS. Now, I tell you, everything in life and your experiences, they get accumulated with you for life. It is up to you when do you dip into it and draw out learnings to your advantage. So when I was with DCM Shriram, I was in the sales coordination department. So first 6 months are common for everyone, and then the
Right.
last 6 months is where people think you will be the best fit, right? So from the sales coordination experience, I realized that the MISs which were being sent, because the production planning used to depend upon the sales coordination.
Right.
What was the market wanting?
Correct.
What were you producing and what were you dispatching?
Right.
And to my utter surprise, even in a multinational, in a finely run company, that used to be a mismatch between operations and marketing. So
Hmm.
to marry the two, how do you have seamless sort of flow of information from your markets into marketing? Because companies never used to have a sales department. So if they
Okay.
thought that the market was wanting a particular bar or a slab or something, they would also do marketing advertising on those brands and give their production planning requirement to the operations department.
Right.
So that dovetailing really sort of, which was not happening, but an apprentice could do it because the apprentice was accepted more than the colleagues. This always happens in corporate world. So they say, well, his sort of a program was successful. Why don't we have him post his graduation?
Right.
So that is how I got my job. Yeah.
Awesome. And so then why did you change from confectionery or FMCG to financial services? I mean, how did
I
that
will,
move?
I will, I will be very, very candid with you. I also had a job offer from HDFC Limited on the campus. But HDFC that time was not a known brand. And people, all youngsters are fashionable people. Even we, 35 years back, like the glamorous world. And Cadbury's was a far more glamorous brand than HDFC Limited. So I joined Cadbury's and did not join HDFC Limited, which is the most valuable brand, financial brand across the world.
Right.
And it so happened that one day our head office used to be in Mahalakshmi, and at times I used to go for just an evening walk or something on the sea face, Worli sea face. And my uncle, Mr. R.K. Goyal, who was the chairman of State Bank of India at that point of time, used to live on the Worli sea face. And he saw me just, loitering with a uh, advertising executive. And he called, that time there were no mobile telephones or things like that. So you used to, at times take me home for dinner and all because he used to cross my office. And he used to always tell me that he is a Angrezi mithai wala. And that is the introduction he used to give to his grandchildren, both Arjun and Aditi, whenever I used to go home. And then he called me and he said, "Why don't you use your life more meaningfully and join a bank?" So I turned around to Mr. Goyal and I said, "Well, uh, an HDFC made an offer, but I refused, like an arrogant youngster. I was nearly 23, 24 years old. And he was surprised. He said, "What the hell have you done?" And he did not believe it. So he called my father. And my father asked me, "Where is that offer?" I'm very good in maintaining records and files. I could exactly tell him that, you open my cupboard on this shelf, this file, this color, this page number is the offer. He sent it by courier to Mr. Goyal, and Mr. H.T. Parekh was the morning walker of Mr. R.K. Goyal, who was
Oh,
the chairman of HDFC Limited. And with folded hands, he expressed to Mr. Parekh that my nephew has done this. And Mr. H.T. Parekh was such a humble man. He said, "If the young man wants to join us, just send him over." And that is how I got into HDFC.
interesting. So, knowingly or unknowingly, here we had the power of networking playing in the background, you know, which
Relationship. Relationship.
yeah,
See,
relationship,
networking has an overtone of something which is obnoxious also.
right,
Never have transactional relationships. Have deep relationships. Even as a boy of 23 years old, working for Cadbury's, one of the most fashionable brands at that point of time, I used to go and visit my Tauji, Mr. R.K. Goyal, and have a dinner and a drink with him.
right,
There's nothing wrong.
correct.
You must be at that point of time at least my age, my current age, 58, 59. I'm 57, so he must be 59, 60. Because after a year or so, he retired. So he must be 59, 60 at that point of time.
So this is what I tell all the students, that probably I learned about relationships and maintaining them almost 5, 10 years after completing my studies. However, if we can start doing it right with our education, in the long term, it works wonderfully for us.
It works wonderfully.
So
Maintain
I
your
have
relationship.
Right. So I have relationships with my teachers, and I go and have drinks with them now, and we have such amazing learning opportunities with them. We have such amazing networking opportunities. They put you in places where you want to go, so it works beautifully. Everybody has to help each other, and it works wonders.
I tell
So,
you,
sir, yeah,
my wife is a teacher. So as you
okay,
talk about teachers, because I was in St. Joseph's Nainital, SEM for 10 years.
Amitabh
My
Bachchan school.
teachers, yeah, my teachers are like my family. And today Anuradha communicates with them on teaching methodologies with brother Walsh and Mr. Shah and all those people. No, I mean
Right,
very few are alive today, but relationships are lifelong. They are not transactional.
right. So, sir, what was your first role in HDFC?
Again, a stunning story. So I was a management trainee and I knew nothing about finance. Had spent about 6 months with a chocolate company or a confectionery company. I was slotted in between the running management training program. I still remember I was very nervous because the program was much ahead of me because I did not join, at the right time. And on the sixth day, uh, Miss Clementine, who was the PA to the HR head, Mr. Nasir Manji, came and put a pink airline ticket in my pocket. And that time, that orange, only Indian Airlines used to be the domestic airlines. I knew I lost my job. She's telling me to go back home, right? So I asked Clemmy what happened. She said, "Well, Nasir will take you out for a lunch," right? So I was confirmed that my job is gone. Because what happened was that when Mr. H.T. Parikh was finally interviewing me, he called Nasir and Mr. Pradeep Shah, who were my recruiters on the campus, and said, "Well, this young man actually refused your offer. I'm getting him back." So I thought probably they were spiteful and they are sending me back home on the sixth day. And the contract said 24 hours notice. You're under probation. So NASA took me out to Regal for there's a cinema hall in Churchgate, and it had a wonderful restaurant, Italian. And he disclosed to me that six colleagues of ours in Lucknow had passed away in a car accident. And since I was the only guy who belonged to Lucknow, this is how solid companies are built. Belong to Lucknow. I never worked in Lucknow or never studied in Lucknow. The company decided that I will be the next officer in charge and is transferring me to Lucknow as the officer in charge of entire Uttar Pradesh, undivided.
Oh,
Yep.
without
So the,
any
without any
background.
schooling, without anything, trust, faith. I mean, today a lot of people say don't trust people in the modern world. This is my privacy. This is my private domain. Don't let anybody enter. Right? On one side, they will do all sort of, PDA, and on the other side, nobody can touch anybody's telephone because it has some other stuff in it. And they trusted me, a 6-year-old employee. An
How
employee six
shoulder
months
that
before that had refused the campus recruitment. I really have that offer letter of 87 and my date of joining 7 or 8 months hence, you know, and the company was never had any malice. They believed in their people.
So
So
getting
you
that responsibility is again a big challenge, you know. So how did you shoulder it when you were put in that Lucknow position without much knowledge or experience?
so what happened was that I was the youngest, I was the most inexperienced, and I was the foolish, the most foolish amongst all. So who were left? The information desk lady, Madhumita Bardhan. I cannot forget those names. Shankar Pathak, the peons, Pramod, the cashier, Vivek, the deposit in charge, and one or two more people. And Regina, the secretary to the branch manager. They were the only people who were left. So I had to learn it my own way. So I used to tell Madhu, who was the front desk in charge, that please teach me. And she is senior to me. And she was very candid. And she said, well, if I teach you within 6 months, you are going to be, I mean, you are my boss already. And if I teach you within 6 months, you will be bossing on me. So I'm not going to teach. Okay. And really, people thought that Sanjay has done something that the six people have died. So there was a little bit of, I would say, discomfort also in accepting me. So what I used to do is, and she's a very pretty lady and a very graceful lady. Where she used to sit, I used to keep a stool and sit down. And I used to tell Madhu, can I hear your conversation with your client? And I will take notes. And she used to tell me that you are not going to put your legs in the leg well because I know you youngsters are very, very funny in your mannerism. I said, certainly. And my knees used to be bruised every day because I used to keep my knees where her drawers were, and I used to always be very attentive, listening to what Madhu was telling the customers. And that is how I learned, practical finance. And the power of observation of a human brain, human eyes, human ears is the best teacher, right? And Madhu is a darling friend of mine. I mean, she and I, we have such loud sort of conversations and laughters even today. But she taught me. I still say she taught me.
There's a very interesting thing I saw somewhere. Once you saw a balance sheet of of a housing finance company, you said that okay, I will be a CEO of a housing finance company. It's like
Yeah.
I heard Shah Rukh Khan say one day I'm going to rule the city, and he became the king of Bollywood. And you one day said I'll be a CEO of a housing finance company, and you did that. So
Well,
I mean, did you get that self confidence?
Amit, I will tell you, working for good companies and good brands is a God's gift. And the biggest gift in my career has been solid brands, right? Let me also unravel a truth. My salary in HDFC was lower than my salary in Shriram and Cadbury's, but
Okay,
it is a solid company, right? I started my career in HDFC with the salary being 1873 per month, whereas in Cadbury's it used to be 2200. In Shriram, it was about 2400, 2 years before. So my salary graph was only coming down, but my companies were very solid. My enterprises where I worked were very solid. And I was an upcountry branch manager, and there were very little to learn. And the real complicated and the structured deals used to happen all out of Bombay. But that company is such a transparent and an inclusive company that they used to circulate the board notes to all the branches with limited circulation. That time there was nothing like emails, it used to be all written. So in my home time, I used to read those board notes wing to wing. And I used to make notes, I used to hardly understand any damn thing. And whenever I had an opportunity to talk to a senior or to visit Bombay and be with people like Mr. Satpalekar, Mr. Parekh, Mr. Satish Mehta, K.K. Mistry, and the rest, CLN Murthy, etc. I used to be innocent enough and curious enough to ask my stupid questions. And they were kind enough to find them not stupid, but relevant. And they would invest their time with me. So my training, my formal training only happened on own initiatives and support that I got from my seniors. Nothing else. And my experience, power of observation, and my own learnings. And
so
another, yeah,
asking questions and the desire, the curiosity to learn, and
innocence. You need innocence to learn.
right, innocence to learn. This is the mantra to become CEO of whatever field you want to be, as
Yeah.
per you.
I still learn from my youngsters. I'm so clear about it. So whenever we were making decisions, even in PNB Housing, which is the third largest, very reputable company, and as you said, it's a published turnaround story by Bloomsbury UK in a book known as Switch. The decision making was democratic, and the youngsters always got an opportunity to share their knowledge, information, and their views. And the best alternative was always chosen to be the decision of the corporate. But once a decision is made, it is like Bible. And to break that decision or not to adhere to a decision is like, blasphemy. Even the managing director has to follow that decision. So if everybody has to start working at 9:55, Mr. Managing Director, you should be there at 9:50, not 9:55.
Right.
Because 10 o'clock, my customer will come, right? So you should not be saying, give me 5 minutes, let me go and freshen up and let me start my laptop and things like that. That's bloody nonsense. 10 a.m. IST means 10 a.m. IST.
That is why he's known as a person who marries strategy to execution.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of people at our level, they are only strategizing. I don't spend more than 12 to 15% of my time strategizing. Then another 10% of the time writing the execution notes, the timetables, the milestones, and the remaining time just executing and monitoring. Nothing else. And everybody in the team is equal with different authority matrices. I'm an employee in the same cadre. The only difference is I'm the first employee. That's all.
So we have a very interesting question at this point from Charvi Sachdeva.
Yes.
She said that, probably you've been lucky that networking help you get there. Did you ever feel you did not deserve what you got,
A
like
lot of
getting a job
times.
in a bank which you had rejected before? Did you have such a thought?
I never thought I never deserved it, but I always thought, at times I thought, not always, that probably I have made a wrong decision.
Every youngster gets this feeling, so I think you should
Yeah,
discuss more on it.
yeah, I will be candid. At the age of 32, I was the international CEO for HDFC Limited. I'm the guy who started financial services abroad for Indian companies way back in 95. And you know what Mr. Deepak Parekh told me while I was coming down from his floor to the ground floor? He put his arm around my shoulder and said, Sanjay, seek happiness and not success. You are too damn successful at the age of 32, but you have unruffled a lot of feathers to get this position. And you know what happened? In Dubai, I was so lonely. I was, I mean, it was my brainchild to set up an international operations, no business. You could not drive. I've been driving from the age of 14. Nobody knew you. That I'm confessing. When I used to cross, and my family was in India because my mentor said this is too risky a proposition. And it was just after the Gulf War. So your family will stay here and you be there, but you can always travel back. I tell you, when I used to cross from my home to the other side of the road many a times, or from my office to the bank where I used to deposit cash, etc. At times I used to pray that a speeding car should run over me. Yes, sir. The youngest CEO of an Indian company used to wish that many times because of loneliness, not being successful, not being confident. So these thoughts do cross your mind. Everybody is a human being. A lot of people say I'm always positive. Well, then you are not a human being. You don't have some other emotions. There's something lacking, right? But
So
yes,
you
go ahead.
everybody's I mean, even with that level of success, such thoughts would come. So wherever you are in life, you have to accept that as your success pyramid and aspire for the next level.
Yes, sir. And let me tell you, once in London, I lost all my documents and my wallet, etc. And I really sat on the street and I cried like a baby. If you can't leave your human instincts, you know. If you were to say that, how did I take my medical episode or my health episode? Well, I did cry a lot of times. It was my dream. I mean, even till date, I design. My inherent virtue is to design. All offices of PNB housing 4 lakh square feet and the internet and the servers and the entire IT security has been designed by me. I
Okay.
know all the nuts and bolts. the entire target operating model, the entire workflow of the company. Because I still, that's an evidence, I still design. Whenever I sit down, I design something. Because my inherent brain or my inclination is towards designing. I may be a banker. I design products. I design offices. I design interiors. I design the network, the workflows, the stations. So
And you're quite
you have to have very deep passions. You have to love yourself.
so, sir, I was going through some of the posts that you've made on LinkedIn. You know,
Yep.
where I see that you are quite nicely understand artificial intelligence, machine learning, score-based lending, etc. Now I was intrigued. Usually, people of plus 60, they are not so abreast with technology, and they usually
I'm
feel
not
like.
plus 60, I'm 57.
So normally people discard these, people at that age say, no, these are not going to work. But you are quite insightful on these matters. How do you
Well,
keep behind the technology?
our young team taught me everything,
And you
and
learn.
my ability to learn,
Yeah.
right? And I will say my childlike curiosity. I still don't have any app. I don't know how to use a Google Map, believe me.
Okay.
But when it comes to designing application for banking, because I've seen operations and customer and I've worked on the front desk myself. I know it so thoroughly that I know what are the expectations.
Right.
So, for example, in PNB Housing is the only finance company which digitalizes, not scan, all physical documents within 36 hours and put them on a private cloud, link it at an account level, and the customer and hindsighters and everybody is using a virtual reality.
Right.
Now, if you want to ask me how did it happen, it happened because when IBM was shouting on top of their voice about private cloud, I started reading about private cloud. And then I called two of my young colleagues who were in the IT infrastructure and all, and I said, "What the hell is all this nonsense?" I always start calling things nonsense or the black box is nonsense. And they revealed to me what can happen if you use it rightly. Then my mind worked that if we were to do, because a lot of auditing and hindsighting happens in banks and financial institutions. And every time you're pulling out the physical file and your system is only doing accounting. So I said, why can't we dovetail it? And two of these youngsters really put in very hard labor and they married one or two softwares, like a Telisma and an Amebio, and that could link from the private cloud, the scanned document to an account level, and link it to the customer service portal and the internal portals. And we had a common sort of a database of all the physical files at an account level available to both sides of the business, which is customer and internal.
So what I see is it is your frontline exposure, your desire, your curiosity to know, and your strong focus on executing and getting things done, which all comes together and makes you do things which maybe you don't even understand so well, like technology.
See, I've never done treasury, right? But I observed my seniors. Right from 91, I was reading about swaps. I was reading about exchange risk. So when I came on the desk, right, I just sort of pulled out that knowledge
So you are an
and
experiential learner.
and start putting it into a real sort of a job. And that is why, whether it is IFC, ADB, or green bonds, ECBs, we were all over the place because somebody had that confidence of at least knowing what all happens. May not everything you can't do yourself. And then the doers feel confident because they know the boss is backing them up. He is
Yeah.
going to ask relevant questions. See, what happens is that if you have seen a gamut of operations, you start asking the right questions. You start challenging the right point of views, and you are not a nuisance in that decision making, which most of the CEOs are, right? Because they don't know shit about anything, right? So here's a guy who knows something and is just asking you to tell him more. And you, as an expert or as a subject matter specialist, please be his guest and explain it to him.
So, sir, since you've talked about so many emotional challenges that you came over, we have a student asking about how did you come out of each of those depressions? Because this is something every student goes through.
I would not say, Aman, that I went through depression, but I certainly went through a state of quizzing myself or escaping, right? And the best way is to talk about it. And to talk about it not to 100 people, but one or two people whom you think they understand you. And they will be, and that will make your heart and mind much lighter. And the moment you sort of relax your heart and mind, positive things and solutions start coming. Because solutions only you will find for yourself. No one will come and give you a solution. I still, I will showcase it to you. Write notes on a daily basis, date wise. And I have these diaries for over last 10, 15 years. I number them also, never destroy them. So whatever thoughts come to my mind, whatever queries come to my mind, I note it down. So my mind feels far more relaxed. Otherwise, what the mind keeps on thinking is that are you going to lose this thought? For example, I'm planning to write an article which has got too delayed on LinkedIn on styles of management which will determine the future of companies in the new normal or in the next normal. Already, my pointers which have crossed my mind, which I should cover, are there for the article. So you have to always make your heart and mind far more relaxed than what it is, and vacate it, keep vacating it, and keep new thoughts keep coming, and that is when you get solutions. If you bog down your mind with only concerns, the solutions don't have a space to come in. So that's one way I follow, and it works for me. I don't know
It,
whether
it works for
it makes
everyone.
sense. Yeah, it makes
Even
sense or not.
during Corona, I had similar challenges, and every time I had a problem, I would write it in my diary, my journal, and by the time you finish writing it, you have more clarity in the mind, and you have overcome that state.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm sure it works with everyone, and all the students should use it. So we have another question from Shruti. She
yes.
wants to ask, what is the biggest challenge a CEO has to face, and how do you overcome that challenge?
Shruti, the biggest challenge, especially in our country, is human capital. We are the second most populous country, but our employability of our people is very ordinary. And I think to make your human capital virtuous and useful for the organization, As a CEO, you have to be patient and you have to really handhold them and I would say drive their journey through learning and development and give them enough exposures and be very sort of I would say expectation setting has to be very clear. And if somebody does something wrong with the best intentions for the company, he or she should not be punished, but should be showed the way how to improve oneself. That is the biggest challenge in our country, human capital.
Great, and that's why we do this knowledge worker session. We are trying to make more and more youth in the country employable through these sessions and initiatives. We have one more question from Anjala. She wants to
Yeah.
know that every person needs motivation to grow in the career. So, what is your motivating factor? What has motivated you through this journey?
Challenges and challenging your boss, not your colleagues and your subordinates. That a coward does. Challenge, have the guts to challenge your boss, always. And that will make you a far more, I would say, better, profound professional because the boss is going to use all his or her wisdom and experience to give you explanations. And they will become your wisdom if you are nimble enough to receive them.
That's a very wise thought. I have another question from Dilkhush Cha. He wants
Yeah.
to ask, what is your advice for managing social and personal responsibilities together with career goals?
Okay. So one is managing your social responsibilities. Uh, I would say that there's a concept which I follow to the T, and that is cost of doing a job. And believe you me, all my life I've consciously or unconsciously spent about 5% of my income in developing my work environment. So for like buying books for colleagues or juniors, even taking them out shopping, because in social responsibility you have to make sure that your office culture has the corporate etiquettes which your brand reflects. And that I learned in Cadbury's, right? So at times you have to even take your colleagues out, your younger colleagues out for shopping, the right clothes, the right shoes, the right attire, the right bag, office bag, right? And so social responsibilities, I would say, are unlimited, but they should not bog you down. You should do your best to discharge them. And whatever you could not manage, don't carry it on your shoulders as a burden. Because then you are not doing it with fun and grace, you are doing it out of compulsion, right? And then you say personal responsibilities. Well, be a faithful husband, a good father, a good mother, a good son, and I think your family will understand why you are devoting so much of time at work, and they will not keep nagging you, and be very, I would say, democratic in family life. Don't bring in gender biases and collaborate and partner with the family.
That's a great piece of advice and a very interesting suggestion on taking your people out for shopping. Now, sir, we have less time, but I want to take one more last question, which is, I am challenging all, you are from 8-digit salary club, and I'm challenging all my alumni to get into 7-digit salary club. So we have a question on what, according to you, is the way to becoming a CEO for all of them.
I would say from day zero, you are the CEO of a smaller domain. Start taking the responsibilities limitless. You are a CEO. And let me tell you, the day the CEO managing director designation comes officially in front of your name, it becomes a bigger responsibility and a liability than fun. As an employee, everyone is a CEO. And that is how I ran my career each day of 33, 34 years. Start taking, see, I never understood. Lot of, and this is a disconnect which happens. What are KRIs and KRAs? I don't know. Lot of people, that was the only thing. So for normalization of a PMS, I would sit down with my CHRO and my functional heads for 10 days and do normalization for each individual before it happens for me. Right. But I don't know what are KRAs and KRIs. They are just guiding principles of your job. They are not limits to your responsibilities. The moment KRIs and KRAs become the limiting factor, and this is where my disagreement with modern management practices come my way. We never had KRAs. A branch manager, yes, sir, the tap is leaking, it is your bloody responsibility. And the tap is leaking, the water will seep into the files and files will get destroyed. Nobody tells you. Nobody tells you which KRI will have that. Make sure that the building doesn't leak. I mean, twice in my life I have extinguished electrical fires and got medals by the local firemen. Now, it was not in my KRI to extinguish electrical fires, but that was the call of the day. Safety of my people, safety of our documents. That's all. And the last one, I did it as a MD CEO of housing in Antariksh Bhavan. Yes.
Yeah. There was a
So, so, so I would always say I'm not getting angry at you. That's my style of talking. I'm saying don't limit yourself.
right.
Be a limitless guy. Like people say, a lot of my young colleagues used to say, "Sir, how much do you like?" I used to always say like this. I said, "There are no boundaries." Similarly, is your responsibility. There are no boundaries.
Right.
Supposing you're driving a car, is there a limit of your responsibility? It's limitless, right? That time, what is the KRI?
So that's an amazing suggestion. Be a CEO from day one. Uh, with that, I want to thank you for such an enlightening session. You are a true knowledge worker. You have always been a learner, and you've always leveraged your learning for creating value. Thank you so much. Is there a last piece of advice you would like to give to all the youngsters
I would
watching this?
just say I had a wonderful time. Thank you for having me here. And you people can always, poach on my time whenever you feel like. And I would just say be intelligently optimistic. There's a difference. One is a foolish optimism, one is intelligent optimism. And intelligent optimism, how it is different is that you are realistic, but you are positive. That's it. Thank you. Have a nice weekend. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this session. We would keep bringing more such sessions for all of you. I just wish that all of you during these Corona times keep keep safe, but keep learning. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye bye.